Hello, Rachel.
Hello, Ryan.
How are you doing?
I'm feeling abandoned.
Really? Is it because Abraham Lincoln's dead?
Yes.
That really feels demoralizing. I don't know how we can continue on with this podcast where we say yum yum at least twice. I don't know how we can go on knowing that Abraham Lincoln's dead and that the Chicago Cubs suck. Which, by the way, that gag worked. Loved that gag. They got Wang. They really got him this time. That was a 10 out of 10 moment for me. But, Rachel, we've been abandoned here in our recording booth.
We're all alone in our coverage, episode by episode, of Space Above and Beyond.
We haven't had any guests. And we're not going to have any guests. It's just you and me, because we're going through this together. I've seen Space Above and Beyond before, but this is your first time round. You don't even know what the next episodes are going to be. You don't know the titles. You don't know nothing. But we try and make you guess anyway. Now, last episode, you had a little bit of a fun time because you were all smug and going, oh, I don't need to guess because I know already because I'm ever so smart. But that was a little bit of a gag. You didn't really know what Sugar Dirt was going to be.
Because at the top of that episode, you were like, well, they give you really obvious titles.
They did in this one. There's literal Sugar Dirt.
Literal Sugar Dirt.
But did you have any ideas of what you were going to sit down and watch today?
I figured that it would be the next advance in the military campaign because they keep on referencing it.
Operation Roundhammer.
Yep, it's coming. And now it's here. Almost.
No, it's launched. It's
the first step.
The invasion of Deimos is the first step of Operation Roundhammer, an ambitious series of planet-hopping maneuvers designed to drive the war to the heart of Chig territory. As Supreme Commander of Earth Forces, I'm proud to lead you all into this battle.
We recommend that you give Space Above and Beyond a watch. There's only a couple of episodes left. If you're tuning in for Sugar Dirt, come on, give Sugar Dirt a watch. It's very good. Rachel, could you give us a reminder of what it is about? What the DVD description has to offer up about episode 21 out of 23?
Well, it's the first time it's been read out loud, and that's the first time that I've seen it as well. The 58th struggles to survive on a desolate planet held by the Chig after the Saratoga is forced to abandon the crew in order to launch an assault that could ultimately save millions of lives.
That is the episode. Now, I've already given a piece of it away, but I very much enjoyed this. I had a great time. I did remember this episode. It is one of the last ones, so it is fresh in the brain because it's just a banger. I always, when I think of Space Above and Beyond episodes, this is definitely one of the ones that floats up to the top. It really encapsulates what the series was going for with the harshness of war, but also having that tonal balancing act. And boy, did it balance those tones perfectly. And we've just had a couple of episodes that have dropped the ball in that regard. So to see them masterfully juggle all of them here was delightful. I felt delighted after watching this. I was on an experience. I was on a journey. They played me like a fiddle. I slapped my knee laughing, and I held back on the tears a bit at times because it really was quite harrowing in moments as well, especially in that final sequence. But most importantly, I was happy that we got a pretty Ross-centric episode, a pretty focused in on Commodore Ross' story. Yeah, and I forgot that he was as prevalent in this as my memories. I remember the stuff on the ground more so. That's what I gravitated towards. But here on this watch, I was just... His guitar didn't show up, but hey, I'll forgive it. Family Pictures showed up this time. So, Rachel, what did you think of Sugar Dirt?
I thought it was amazing. Outstanding. One of the best episodes of the season. I said I don't think I've felt this sad and happy in the same moment watching Space Above and Beyond. When McQueen walks through that door.
McQueen coming in at the end, being their light, their beacon, their constant. There's even that beautifully done scene where we have the establishment of the 58th who are now trapped on this planet all by themselves. You know, there's other people around, but they don't have support of the Saratoga or the rest of the Earth. And so they're trapped. So every 1900 hours, they phone into the Saratoga and they get yelled at by Dr. Hobbs from Babylon 5. Here she is, Dr. Hobbs from Babylon 5. She yells at them for jamming up the lines, and you have McQueen just chew her out for doing so, because you should never, ever make them think that they're not needed. And that was one of those moments where it rang true to the character of McQueen and what he has been for them throughout this series. It made me think of in the Christmas episode when they gave him the locket, West's locket, which is a symbol of that as well. And it just was, this episode brought a big smile to my face. I'm in awe of how they can swerve from the dramatic war stuff to those moments of levity without it ever undercutting here.
Yeah. It's swift.
It's seamless. It's one of those things where I like Space Above and Beyond because it's a dour show. I've said that in the past. I like its drab colors. I like its brooding characters because it's unflinchingly that. But a part of making that work is to have the counter, the juxtaposition. And to make the human, to make these characters human, you have to have Wang being offended that they are making fun of his baseball team, or Cooper making a silly insult, and it's the first thing that came to his head because he's so exhausted that's all he could come up with right now. Stop having a go at me. This is all I could think of.
It was just off the top of my dome.
Or brilliant exchange. Wang was great in this episode. He didn't have too much, but I think he had a good amount, actually, just to say. But
he was there when he was needed, and I feel like that applies to all of the characters.
Oh yeah,
in this episode, especially with the introduction of a couple of newer faces,
and even the higher-ups, there were some old faces we've seen in several episodes, like the Admiral, and it was great. Yeah.
They're not our usual cast.
No, they're not. But even then, everyone worked well in this. But I like that exchange between Wang and Cooper, where Wang's asking him, does he remember that baseball game? Was it baseball or basketball?
Basketball, because it was about Michael Jordan.
Well, never forget, Michael Jordan retired from basketball to become a baseball player. Never forget that. But yes, he's talking about one of his sports games, and he asks, "Do you remember that?" And Cooper just said, "I wasn't born yet." Yep. And Wang just says, "Oh yeah.
Then it would have been hard.
Yeah, it would have been hard for you to remember that then." You need those things here to make the episode hit harder.
Yeah.
And they've learned that over the course of the season.
Because they feel like people and not just Marines. And that's such a big part of the theme of this episode, is that they're still people. Mm-hmm. They're officers, they're Marines, they're in the military. They have different levels of power and different levels of knowledge and different abilities.
And maturity.
But they are all people with emotions.
Ross highlights that at the very end of the episode when he expresses his deep regrets about what has happened. He frames it very much in that way of, as an officer, as your superior,
I have no need to.
I have no need to apologize. I don't have regrets. But as a human, I do.
Yep. I don't have to explain myself as a Commodore, but I want to explain myself as a man.
As a commander, I feel no need to explain my actions. But as a man, as a human being, I must share my emotions. I have never been more ashamed of myself. Or more proud of you. Welcome home.
So they're called to take back this airbase, this airstrip that was taken earlier in the war, and it's just been a middle finger to Earth this entire time that this airstrip that they made is now being used to launch off fighters that are killing them.
There's a lot of pride involved, but it's also a key planet in the system.
Yes. And so the 58th are put down there to take it back, but it's too easy. The 58th and a whole bunch of people, it's a whole coordinated effort.
Yep, but they expect, I think it's like
80% casualty.
Yes. And I think they send like
25,000 people down there, and only 2,000 come back.
Mm-hmm. Which is 92% losses, I think. So, only 12% more than they expected.
And let's factor in all the losses of the Eisenhower too, which was not factored into that at all.
No.
That got blowed up real good. That was a great CGI shot of the debris of that. It was very well done.
I found the mix of CG into real sets extremely good in this episode. Like, there's a shot of a CG ship falling behind them at one stage. I was like, oh crap!
Yeah, they really pushing the limits with what they could do with mixing those together. But the 58th on the ground, then they're abandoned. They don't know why. All they know is they're not getting any support.
Nope.
And
You're on your own.
You're on your own, and you're allowed to surrender if you want. We aren't going to hold you to any accountability. You're on your own. And you were very surprised when we cut to 2 months later. You reacted viscerally to that. Do you want to talk us through your overall experience with this stuff?
Well, what I said out loud was what I felt, which was, oh shit, I didn't think they would do that. I didn't think that they would dare do a time skip that's significant within an episode. The precedent for it was set out with what McQueen said. So it doesn't feel like it's out of nowhere and for no reason. We know exactly why it's skipping those 2 months. And thank God they didn't do a montage instead.
What it does, though, that surprise factor is, they're committing to it. They're actually doing the thing. It tells us this time skip.
They're going all in on this premise. They're going
all in on the premise, and they will most likely do more time skips. And it makes you nervous because how long are the 58th going to be here? Is it going to be for the singular episode? Is it going to be for the remainder of the season?
Is it going to be 8 months?
Who knows? Are they... Now, I don't know if this floated by your brain at all, but did you even consider... Will the 58th be missing out on potentially the tides of the war changing majorly, whether it is Earth is losing now or they're winning? Because that's a large thrust of the background of this is they're out of action.
Yeah. It's just like we don't really know. We only see a sliver of what's going on. But that's what we see most of the time. And like... the idea that Earth isn't doing very well. Like, we do get that idea, but we don't know how bad it is. Like, can we even win this war is a question that gets asked a lot, but a lot of it is done implicitly rather than explicitly.
A shooting star. Maybe it's a sign of hope.
That's not a shooting star. It's debris from the Eisenhower falling out of orbit. That'll happen for years.
Well, we ain't gonna be around to see it.
Shut the hell up! From day one, you have made cracks like that. What the hell good does it do, huh? What is the point?
They decide to stay Marines. They are basically on body patrol, going around and finding the bodies of their fallen comrades and burying them, because Marines always bury their dead, which is a statement that we've heard over and over and over again.
That was what Ray Butts did.
Yes.
He went out of his way to go bury his men.
Throughout the whole season, we know that that's important to them. And we know that Cooper doesn't give a shit about that.
Cooper is the character out of all of them that is the least enamored with the rules and with the etiquette and the code. He will do them because he's ordered to do them, but he doesn't love it, and he's the most easily emotionally charged and juvenile as well.
Yes,
he is like 6.
Yep.
But yeah, we have a conflict already forming with them burying the bodies, not just in terms of, oh no, we could be shot by the Chigs at any point doing this, which is there. Yeah. And there's a brilliant sequence that we've already touched on momentarily, and we will touch on it more so, but the conflict of the group within, because Cooper is speaking in a way that is true for everyone there. It's not just that he's juvenile. That's not the right thing to say necessarily, because what he's getting at, there's a major truth to it, but he is just aggressive right away about that. But we see over the course of the episode that because of the actions of Shane, or the inactions of Shane, all of them get to the point he does where they want to turn their back and break apart, and that's something Shane knew would be the case.
Yeah,
but
if they didn't have something to keep them together, if they didn't have hope, then they would fall apart.
That exchange where Cooper makes that snide remark and Shane just yells at him, and just, you can feel that this has been something bubbling up between the two of them for months, and now she's just let it out. That was glorious to behold, because we've also become comfortable relatively that our 58th are friends.
Yeah.
They aren't at each other's throats anymore like they used to be. And so to see them back there again, it's a trip down memory lane in terms of showing us how far they have come. And I think that's a major underpinning of this particular episode's point, is see how far our characters have come by reminding us at points where they used to be and showing us how they struggle to be where they are now.
Yep. And how thin the ice is on that development that they've made, because they've made it through overcoming obstacles, and they're stuck, they're trapped, there's no end in sight, and they've been told that. They've been told to not hold out hope.
And all the dead bodies of their fellow Marines is a
reminder,
daily reminder.
After reminder after reminder that they are alone, that there is just nothing left for them.
Death.
Only death. And they accept that at the end, and they accept that together. Yeah. And that's a sign of them regrouping and coming back together as a squadron at the bitter end.
When it all comes down to it, they're still together, even though that is challenged, even though we see the potential of that not being true. When push comes to shove, when the enemy comes knocking at the door, or what they perceive to be the inevitability of death, they're going to be by each other's sides. They're going to be holding each other's butts.
Survive. Yes, they've got a strong hold on each other's butts.
But I was thinking about the pilot a lot during this episode, because these characters were not as sensible then. They were far more immature brash, loud, rah, gung-ho, let's get into it, let's play the Ramones.
Was naive.
Yeah, and they were over their heads. But now, even though you have Cooper at his wit's end, and even Paul, who's just you get to the point where they're eating dirt. That's how desperate they are.
Yeah, because it has some sugar
that's melted into it from the explosion. But yet, even though they're at this dire straits of desperation, they've grown up so much since we've met them.
Yes.
When they are bickering at each other in this episode, for my standpoint as a viewer, I'm with them. I agree with them. I understand them.
All of them.
Rather than in the opening era of the series where they're figuring out the characters as writers and as actors, and we are too, where you put your hands on your hips going, this is the TV thing where you have to have them at each other's throats to show off how different they are to one another, but by the end they're going to be together. Like there wasn't that naturalism to it like there is at this point. And I just want to ask you, since this is pretty much the end of the series, how do you feel about that type of growth and how it's kind of culminated to this point?
I'm shocked that they've pulled it off. I appreciate and like this show in a way that I was not expecting to. Even though you love the fuck out of this show.
I do.
You do. And you tried to sell me on it, but like the false start previously and still the pilot, I was just like, how far can this go with this as what it's doing? And then I get to Sugar Dirt, and I'm with those characters as they are shoveling dirt into their mouths, and they're happy doing it.
It's always important to have characters that you can attach to, because I am, and as are you, Rachel, stories, they're good. It's good to have really great, plots, but I would rather have great characters pushing me through. Because if you break down Sugar Dirt as a story, it's not the most complex thing.
No.
But most of Space Above and Beyond's plots are not the most layered, nuanced, deep, epic stories. They're simple, but they're great foundations for great character work. And we have so many moments of insight and wonder and genuine rawness on the ground, where what we're actually watching is people walking from one smoky landscape to the other, picking up things from dead bodies, and they're just chatting to each other. I would rather watch that than the big, we must have plot over that. That's a part of the reason why we slam Star Trek Discovery so hard, or a lot of modern Star Trek, where they focus rather on plot and ham-fisted theme than over character in any way. And so I sit there going, why should I care about anyone in Star Trek Picard? Because I don't know any of them. But here in Space Above and Beyond, yes, there's some things about the war in general I would like more definition on, as would you, but I never question who Wang is, or Danfus, or Cooper, or Nathan West, or none of them.
We've got the fact that he knows, Cooper knows what yellow snow is, not a thing about sex.
Well, he is a child, so of course he would know about that.
Yeah,
but he doesn't know what Christmas is.
Just thatness. I don't.
What can we just talk about the scene where the Chigs show up on the ground? Because I joked they found these dead bodies, and I joked, they mustn't have sent any ground troops in because these guys still have their heart and eyes. And then a scene goes by, and it's like, knock at the door. Ryan, we heard you. We heard that statement. We're going to follow through on that now, because here are the Chigs are on the ground. And what did you think about the setup and then eventual reveal of what was going on here, because the setup is you hear a person crying in the distance for help, and then the payoff to it is, no, it's the Chigs using technology to fuck with them and try and bring them in. What did you think about all of that?
It made a lot of sense, because they've almost been caught out by that trap before of them using recorders, and then, like, I almost got fooled again when the chick pulled up the heart.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, wait, did they fuck up? No.
Nope.
No. They held true because they knew their enemy.
They play dirty. They use traps. They're not afraid, as our team as well. We have had in the Fear Planet episode the mines and how they plant bombs on people as well, and they use the injured and the wounded to bring in more to kill. And here they're using vocal recordings that they've manufactured up, their AI text-to-speech program. And since they don't understand humans enough, there's just...
The Abe Lincoln comment is just a little bit off.
But then they followed up with the Chicago Cubs suck or whatever it is, they're bad. And Wang gets up. He's like, how dare they? I'm going to kill them.
Like, I know that I'm walking into a trap, but I will not let this injustice stand.
After having tried to stop Cooper from getting up and all of that, they're both children. They're both so silly, but we know them well enough where we can not just say forgive, but enjoy those things instead of rolling our eyes and saying it's undercutting the seriousness of it all.
It's pulled something off that I don't know if I've really thought about before, but what you said just sparked it, which is it's such a tricky thing to pull off as a writer, which is I like the faults of these characters almost as much as their strengths, if not more. Like, it's them as a whole package. I love Hawks's immaturity and his gaps in knowledge. I love Wang's immaturity and his love of sports, his encyclopedic knowledge. I love Danson's internal strength and that desire, that deep, deep desire to keep the 58th together.
She has to be the leader. That's not only her role, but we've heard that about how she grew up. She has to be the one looking after everyone, and that means making tough calls.
And on for all of our main cast.
Oh, completely agree. They're that well defined, and for a first and only season, but for a first season of a science fiction ensemble show, that is usually the failing.
They take too long, or they put their eggs in the wrong basket, which they did with a little while with not acknowledging how amazing McQueen is.
Oh, they figured that out real quick, like episode 3.
And we know that amidst all the hellfire and fear, in the seconds between firing and being fired upon, there is a whisper in their hearts that feels like a scream at the top of their lungs saying, we'll be there to back them up. And now we won't be.
We get to the big thrusting conflict in the group as well, which is Shane's leadership. Shane's leadership and her strict need to stick to a schedule to maintain order comes under fire because they've all reached their end. They're all burnt out, but she's still pushing them. She's still pushing them to find these bodies and bury them, and she's the only one that's still got that spark, and it's because that's what keeps her going. Mm-hmm. She needs to keep doing that.
To keep going, she needs to keep them together for as long as possible.
And we find out that they are resenting her for that. And it comes in different ways at different points as well. And I really liked how they handled this conflict because, of course, you naturally agree with Shane. You understand what she's doing.
You know the worth in what she's doing.
But we also know that is a negative in her personality as well, and it
puts
bites her in the ass at times.
On her relationship with other people,
like with her potential fiance in that one episode, right, where nothing lasts forever. But
and also with her sisters,
right?
We've seen that at different points as well.
And so I want to praise very highly how gracefully they handled this, because there are so many episodes of sci-fi shows. Oh, Battlestar Galactica is one with Starbuck, say, or Apollo, where they're making those tough leadership calls. And for some reason in a lot of these, and I'm not saying that this never has worth, because Spock in Star Trek was really great at this, and it was used to marvelous effect of they're jerks while they do it, and so that adds an extra bit of flavor to it. But she's not a jerk while she does this. But I'm so used to these stories where they to keep pushing them and to keep doing this and the they play it off a bit power mad or jerkish or kind of dickish, or I've got to knuckle down like Starbuck in Battlestar Galactica. That was her whole entire character. She had to be the brat of the group. She had to be the blowhard to get her way. And I actually like that Shane doesn't have to do that. Shane can yell and raise her voice and stand her ground without having to play it as somebody who is there to necessitate the drama that the script is putting down. The actress does a masterful job with balancing those things. Sugar Dirt is just an episode where the thing that I praise the most, as do you, is balance. It is very balanced when it comes to the performances, the tone, the direction, the atmosphere. It doesn't fall on one way or the other too much. It just keeps it even-keeled the whole way through, and so there's that consistency and balance that is throughout it. Now, when it comes to Shane, what did you feel about when the radio did break and how she keeps using it? Because at that point, at least from my reading, she's doing it for herself.
Yeah, and also to try and keep them together, because if they're still doing the things that can make them Marines, then they can stay together as a squad. And she's right, they fall apart as soon as they don't have that.
But once she reveals the honest truth and says as much, they do come back together.
Yeah.
So did she give them enough credit or not? Because in the end, they do come together.
Yeah, but would they have, if they didn't see what they think is the Chig squadron coming back?
Well, they also had the airfield to go to, right?
Yeah.
And I don't know.
Because they've reset up the base.
They set up the base. They retook it again.
Circle.
I think it's left vague enough where you can fall one way or the other, but you're glad that it did work out for them. But I did actually think that it was selfish of her to keep that secret from them, and she was never going to tell them.
No, she was never going to volunteer it, but she was honest with how long it had been going on.
Mm-hmm. She was mirroring what was going on with Ross and McQueen, but just on a local scale for them. What she was doing was happening to them from the superiors. She was now doing it to them. And so where does the buck stop? And why I say I feel that selfishness there is when Damphus gets upset at you.
You know you fucked up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Didn't you feel that sensation where even Damphus was like, how could you do this to us? Because Damphus is the nicest, the most understanding.
It's a betrayal of trust for all of them that she lied about the state of the radio. And I think it's also a sign of how down they are, how much past the point of rock bottom. They all are. That Vanessa cannot even see the good in what Vanson was trying to do. Because typically she would be like, oh, she was trying to keep us together and we do need to stay together. And instead she's just like, you fucking lied to me, I'm fucking off.
It meant a lot to all of them what she was doing in the end, but the person it meant the most to was Shane herself.
Yes.
Because in the final scene...
She admits it.
No, in the final scene of the episode...
yes.
She's the only one that knows why they feel the way they do, because she knows it's nearly 1900 hours and it brings a tear to her eye.
Yeah.
And so this routine that she instilled in them to keep them together impacts her emotionally the most at the end.
Whoa, does Captain Vanson think we couldn't handle it? What do you think, we're children? A bunch of idiots?
Back off, Hawks. What are you gonna do? You gonna throw me in the brig for striking an officer? If that's the kind of leader you are, a liar. I am not one of you anymore.
They were left there by Ross and McQueen because every single high roller
entire
in
world military left them behind.
What did you think about that? We actually got to see all of these other nations and countries,
it was cool.
generals and admirals and people.
It was cool. It's like, oh, they're all working together finally. They've become allies.
It's just a nice follow through on the fact that this is not a united Earth, which was very much set into motion with Eyes as an episode, and we saw it again with Pearly, with our British boy. And so to actually see all of these generals, you had an Indian guy, you had a Chinese guy. It was really great to see that. It's one of those things where I would love to see more of that. If this got to go on longer, I would have loved to have seen the 58th pair up with another cruiser, another ship that was, say, the Indian Army or the British or some other nation. I actually think there's a lot of ground to be played with there of different nations, different military etiquettes, and
there's no shortage of ideas.
There's a lot of ideas to go there, but they are doing this big maneuver, Operation Roundhammer, and then they realize that this is very easy. It's a trap, and through this trap, though, through this loss, we could gain a victory because this big important planet, they've left practically undefended, and we can go straight for that. But the moral dilemma comes in for Ross, which is, do I agree to help win this, potentially get a win for humanity, saving millions of lives in the process? But to do so, I abandon 25,000 of my men who trusted me.
I'm not going to ignore the cost. The general, is it Admiral?
The Supreme Leader?
Well,
there's the Admiral.
The two.
Yeah,
so
the Admiral.
The one who's just
the one we've seen before.
Yeah.
Yeah, he was Admiral.
He's just like, suck it up. Suck it up. We're fighting a whole war. We got to worry about that. Where, like, you get the sense that dude is more like the British general who never actually saw a dogfight, was never a ground pounder, compared to Ross and McQueen, who rose up through the ranks and know what that fear is, and they talk about that, and that they want to spare people from that, and they don't want anybody to feel abandoned and to be left behind and to be thinking that somebody's coming for them when they're not. Whereas the other dude does not give a fuck at all.
Well, I think there's something
about the individual people.
Well, I understand that completely, but here's the thing that I think's marvelous about this story. It's a Ross story. This is the most development Ross has. He has a real big, juicy arc to sink his teeth into as a character, because hasn't Ross been that guy in other episodes where he's had to ask them to do things that would be deadly or detrimental, or things that they wouldn't like to do because of the greater good, the bigger picture. In a micro way, we saw that in Dear Earth, where he wanted the McQueen and Hawks to do the documentary because of the larger, greater good at play. That was Ross in the very first episode of this show, where he was just Mr. I come in and everything that happened here is what's the word? I always get it wrong. It's like compartmentalized. Compartmentalized. He was that guy.
Yeah, he was.
And now we're seeing that similar behavior done on him, but from someone above Ross.
Yeah.
And makes him feel
that
weird.
Attitude trickles down is something that gets highlighted.
So I don't even want to say that that guy above him doesn't have any feelings, but just like Ross in the beginning,
hiding them. He's being a military officer more than he's being a person, because he doesn't have that relationship with Ross. It's a working relationship, but we've seen, like, Ross and McQueen have a long history. They're more than just colleagues. They are friends. And that has become the case with our crew of the Wild Cards and McQueen and now Ross. They're all really linked as people as well as officers, and thus they can show that vulnerability. Whereas the general
and the admirals and all the higher ups,
they don't have that. They don't have the luxury of being people.
Yeah, they have to put their priorities in different places. We actually saw this in the last episode with the general from the Native American general, where that was something he has to grapple with, where he has to do this greater good, but as an individual person, he actually has thoughts, he actually has feelings, and even as a man of a certain culture, he had feelings. And I actually rather like that ongoing thread in the series, where we see characters, whether they're one-offs like that general, or are ongoings like McQueen and Ross, who initially can start off as those people who are, you got to get the job done. You know, I understand what you're coming at from, but I am your leader, and I'm telling you have to do this because I know the greater good, I know the mission, I know what you have to do, son, and all of that. But now we get scenes of those two guys, or those individuals, sitting down and actually having deep conversations about what that is like, what that position is like, how that taxes your soul and your psyche, and how do you go on with making those calls, because Ross doesn't want to do it. He wants to save his men. He wants to bring them back. He doesn't want to do it. And this is the most affirmative we've seen Ross take action in terms of saying no to the hierarchy.
Yeah, and it highlights something that they've gone back to over and over again, which is if you don't follow orders, everything falls apart.
Ross, in the first half of this season, was a lackey to Aerotech and to the generals. And so we would see him buck up against it, but then bite his lip and say, I'll do it.
Yeah.
And now we're seeing him say, I don't want to do that.
This was too much. This was too much to ask of him. He wasn't willing to give that up because it was a personal cost against his principles.
I just can't bring myself to leave them.
Me neither. I want to join them. Sir. Request permission to stay with the supply ship with the intent of going on planet.
Permission denied. I'm not going to reduce the Corps' finest pilot to a supply sergeant.
Commodore Ross. Glenn. I'm asking as a friend.
And I'm responding as one.
I'm an actor, so sometimes I look at media through this lens and it gives me an extra layer of enjoyment, but I don't know if you ever get this. But when I saw this episode, I thought of Tucker Smallwood getting the script and getting a big smile on his face and saying, "Oh, I can't wait to play this scene," and to really get into the material. From the very beginning, I felt that. I just thought of these actors getting the script and going, "Yeah, I'm going to get something to play with." And it made me extrally excited because they're not going to fuck it up.
No, and you were looking out for the little things that they decide to do with that opportunity. And I found myself just in awe of it. I wasn't thinking about it exactly that way. I was just like, they're fucking nailing it, because they, as actors, were coming up to meet the script and elevating it even further, which is why, like, this is going to be an easy yum yum, because it becomes greater than the sum of its parts. Because everything is on its A game. Like, there was even a moment where I was like, oh, fucking yellow filter. But, like, 2 scenes later, I did not give a shit about the yellow filter of them going, well, there's an alien planet, so it has to be a different
Because
color.
it wasn't intruding upon what the story was or what the theme was.
Because I was so interested in other things that were going on that I didn't care. I didn't need to pay attention to that because I wasn't trying to find something to focus on, because the characters and the performance and the score were so beautifully knitted together that I didn't care.
They know what they're doing. They know what they're doing. There's that conversation where after McQueen has backed up the play, he and Ross confront each other about it, but it's not a confrontation of arrogance or aggravation or aggression. It's a confrontation of these two people who have a beautiful working relationship, but a personal friendship, realizing that they're at odds with one another. But the thing that they're at odds at too are they're on the same side. They both want the same thing, but they both just have different ways of going about it. And so there is no animosity there. There's that conversation moment where McQueen feels the guilt of what he's done, and he wants to stay behind on that ship that's going to give supplies. And he actually has to say Glenn. He has to call Ross by his first name.
I'm doing it. I'm asking you as a friend.
And Ross, Glenn, denies him, but not as a superior officer, but also as a friend. And that conversation, those quick fire lines, that's the relationship of the two characters. If you had to say, Ryan, what is the relationship between McQueen and Ross? It's that conversation. Everything that happens in that conversation is the whole entire season of those two characters, where they're great peers, they respect each other so much, but when they do have conflict with one another, they're just as respectful about it.
I think of an alternative scene still, even though I acknowledge the truth in everything that you said, but I think of when McQueen is leaving for the mission in Angriest Angels.
Mm-hmm.
The funeral.
Yeah, I like that one too.
Yeah, I think of that because it's just like the bravado and caring nature that they have for each other.
And they can crack under each other's armor.
Yeah.
They can get underneath the armor of one another in a way that doesn't diminish.
No.
I also really liked the conversation where there was a beautiful thing actually where our characters of the 58th are struggling to survive. They're starving, they're thirsty, they're having to eat the fucking dirt. hard cut to Ross sitting in his office, casually pouring himself a scotch, giving it a sniff, and there's McQueen sitting there with his, and they go, no, we have to leave this for when things... It just showed the differences of what the two sides were going on, and yet both sides, when it comes to Shane and when it comes to Ross, were struggling with the same thing, which was leadership and responsibility. What do you do? How do you respond to that? Because in an
ongoing crisis.
In an ongoing crisis where things are uncertain. And Ross, that's where we get to talk about those family photos that he has on his desk. And we've seen them on his desk a couple of times, but we haven't really got to have much more than just a brief glance. And here we actually talk about it, and we actually talk about how there are those lives that will never leave your heart. And McQueen's response, what did you think about his response to all of this heady and quite beautiful stuff that Ross was just putting into the ether there?
It felt like the truth. It felt like that character was speaking his truth, that he didn't really know what that meant a little while ago. And that hurts in a way, because that was the way that his life was designed to be as an in vitro. He was meant to be alone. He was meant to have no family, so nobody cared when he died.
He was meant to just be an other.
Yeah, he was just a human shield that they dehumanized.
Just like the higher-ups have to dehumanize the 58th so that the war can continue forward, but Ross and McQueen are unable to do that.
And I think it's something that's never left my mind is how strongly connected, but in a very different way, McQueen was to the angriest angels. And to the loss that of that squadron had on him, and how he's connected with the 58th in a very different way because of that loss.
One of the huge takeaways that I have from Space Above and Beyond is you can have a science fiction series that can be highly emotional, have interpersonal conflict, and it can be good. Not everything has to be 90s Star Trek where, you have to be withheld on that. And not everything has to be, in modern sci-fi where you have high emotions and interpersonal conflicts, it's bad because it's poorly done. This is a series that does it really, really, really well. It's actually the most endearing quality about it is those high emotional stakes. Is those interpersonal conflicts. And I'm so glad that before the series wrapped, before it got cancelled, we got a deep Ross episode. I thought he got so much here. To me, he was the main character of the story. Him and Shane got the most to do. And that scene where we already talked about it, but I just want to talk about it again, where he comes into the 58th as they're recovering, and they're just
set up with IVs in their bunks.
And he just strips it all away and just says the truth of what's going on for him. And then he just has to walk away and turn his back and look elsewhere because he just can't be in that moment for too long. But I appreciate that he's a character that can take off that.
He faces them.
Yeah.
And he acknowledges them as people, which is us. Like, it's like, I always find it deeply beautiful when a strong character opens up like that. They pull the mask down and they're vulnerable with people that they care about in a very honest and painful way. And it felt so earned here. It's heartbreaking and heartwarming.
It's a yum yum from me.
Yum yum. It's a yum yum from me.
Yum yum.
I don't know if it's just because we've had a couple of lesser episodes, but this is honestly in my top 3 right now. I really enjoyed Sugar Dirt. I really got a lot out of this.
Yes.
Well, we'll get to the end of the season and we'll do our recap and we'll find out what our top episodes are. Have a sit down, look back over, and we'll see where we land. Now, do you want to hear what next episode is called? Episode 22. It is, and if they lay us down to rest. ... Are
we going to lose one of the 58?
What do you think? Second last episode of the show. They knew they were cancelled at this time, scrambling to do some stuff.
I'm really scared that they're going to kill at least one character off.
So do you think that's what the plot will be? That some incident will happen and the 58th, one of the members of the 58th could die?
Core 58.
Yeah. What do you think?
I don't know. I say no because I hope that it's not. So that's theory 1, which I don't want to happen. My heart's in my throat right now just thinking about it.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to go there. It'll be an experience for you if it does go there when we're watching it. My other theory is that we're going to get a bit more of an understanding about why the Chigs take the hearts and the eyes.
All right, some Chig lore and a possible death of a main character. That is Rachel's prediction for the second last episode. So everyone, make sure to give that a watch in the meantime, and feel free to contact us if you want to let us know your thoughts and feelings on things we've discussed here or the episode itself. You can hit us up at our social medias under YumYumPod or YumYumPodcast. Follow us on there. We're posting things. We're interacting. You can email us over at
yumyumpod@gmail.com.
If you want to support us financially, you can do so over at Patreon, where we have many, 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 many episodes, many pieces of bonus content, a group Discord, and the entire discussion of Space Above and Beyond. We gave this to our patrons first, and then we uploaded it to the main feed. So if you are just too impatient to wait the next couple of weeks to hear our entire catalog about Space Above and Beyond, you can head on over to our Patreon, and there's plenty of other goodies over there. Thank you all so much for tuning in and listening to us. And just, I stress this from time to time, but I just like knowing that people are giving Space Above and Beyond a watch. It's a series that...
like knowing that Pags will be remembered.
I love to know that the hero that is Pags will forever be remembered.
Here's to Pags.